In today's equity index futures markets, let's take a look at the NASDAQ futures today as the NASDAQ futures are realizing further upside. Up about 1.4% currently, right around the 11,037 level. So 11,037, and that's the high end of the range. And if we hold here, we're going to be putting in new closing highs for the NASDAQ futures. And when you look at some of the driving factors today, I think certainly one thing is that continuation of the trend. We're seeing the NASDAQ futures up now 4 consecutive days in a row. So again, renewed strength here as we enter August. And when a couple other driving factors here, I think first you have to look at the tech earnings that we realized last week, continuing to propel the markets higher today. And we're also seeing certain names within the tech sector having substantially positive days today, particularly when you look at the likes of an Apple or a Microsoft. Couple that with the data points that came out. We saw overnight and into today some pretty decent data points coming out of China, coming out of the EU, both PMI numbers stronger than expected. The data points out of the United States were a little bit mixed, but for the most part, pretty much in line, maybe slightly better than what was expected. So I think that's also another catalyst here, helping to push these NASDAQ futures to these high levels. And when you look at some of the trends in place, it is interesting that to me it looks like coupled with earnings, the stay-at-home trade is now working its way back into the market and helping push the NASDAQ 100 higher and therefore the futures higher, as we are seeing again some slowing of certain aspects of the ability to get out into the economic structure. And I think we're seeing some reining in of exposure to certain areas within the economic structure, not only here in the United States, but globally as well. And you would expect, as we have seen for the last several months, the big names that have benefited from that will continue to benefit in theory if we continue to see, again, some stimulus coming from central banks and governments across the globe. And I think the other thing to point out today is it's an interesting dynamic to start the month of August, as we are actually seeing the Russell futures having the best performance today. The Russell futures up about 1.6% today. What I mentioned, the NASDAQ futures about 1.4%. We did see the Dow futures up about 90 basis points and the S&P futures up about 70 basis points. So that's kind of the fallout for your different equity index futures markets today. So we did see, again, not only did we see strength in the NASDAQ, but we did see strength in the small caps as we entered the first trading day of August.